Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another segment here of the Verified Carrier podcast with another guest here where we're going to look things as we analyze the supply chain and take a look from different vantage points. We're going to look at the legal side now. And so I have Brian Nelson joining me here. Brian, if you could just tell people about yourself, who you are, who you represent, and how you got into what you got into.
Perfect. Brian Nelson. I'm a partner here at Taylor Nelson Slattery and Bernard. We are a transportation focused law firm. We literally that's all we do is transportation, uh, truck transportation, rail, air, ocean, some international transportation matters as well. Home delivery, final mile, equipment disputes, collection matters, cargo claims, anything that touches transportation, we're there. And how I got into this industry is honestly on a complete lark. It was really just the fact, and for anyone who's heard me on a podcast has probably heard me say this or present at a conference, heard me give this kind of spiel. I literally am in transportation because all of my friends in law school bailed on me when it came to getting a softball team together. So I had a bunch of guys together. We were going to play softball one night a week during first year of law school. Day came to collect all the money. Everyone's like, "Oh man, I'm really busy. I don't know that I will have time." And so I got that excuse throughout. I'm like, "Man, it's just like 3 hours a week. Like you're not going to be studying that much." So, anyways, I went to the fields after the season had started, and I went to get picked up by a team. And uh, this one kid comes running up to me. He's like, "Hey, man, I heard you're looking for a team." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Great, because one of the guys on our team just threw a bat at an umpire last week and got kicked out of the league. And it just so happens that was a trucking company." And so I stayed with them. I played softball with them through all 3 years of law school. And then at the end of it, they're like, "Hey, we're looking for a general counsel. Do you want to come in and throw your hat into the ring?" And from there, that was 2009. I've been in transportation exclusively ever since.
All right. You've seen some wild times then.
Yeah. So when I was in house, went through the downturn. Actually, interesting story. I have an associate here at the firm. She's absolutely phenomenal, amazing at what she does. She handles like cargo claims like an absolute champ. And she was with I had her as a law clerk when I was in house. And during the downturn, I remember we went through uh, some reductions in force, and she was one of the people I had to reduce in force. And I remember when I came out to private practice, so I was in house for about 12 years with a third party logistics company. We had a subsidiary motor carrier entity and a TMS provider, and or a TMS subsidiary. We spun those off, and I stayed with the brokerage a little bit longer. But when I came out to private practice, she was my first call. I was like, "Hey, do you want to come back and do more transportation?" She's like, "Yes, absolutely." So I was very excited about that. But yeah, so saw the downturn in the 2012, 2013, saw COVID come, and I remember one of the craziest things, right, was the march on Washington for the carriers regarding broker transparency rules. And at the time, working for a brokerage, you know, they're getting all these crazy margins. Well, those margins lasted for like 2.5 months, and then and then everything, the market turned pretty aggressively. And so uh, man, things are just whiplashing back and forth. And unfortunately, we're in that, the downturn in the early aughts does not compare to what we're dealing with right now.
Yeah, it's a wild market. Myself, my dad had a trucking company. Then I went and joined C.H. Robinson for a few years. Spent some time overseas. I was actually in Saudi Arabia when COVID hit, so that's a whole different adventure in itself. But yeah, for anybody that's not in the industry, they just don't know about this whiplash that happens here. And so there's no slow and steady here. It's the craziest Six Flags roller coaster. And so
Yeah,
whatever
and
we're
then
doing now and what we're working on, it feels like 12 months from now, it could be a whole different ballgame.
absolutely, and the holiday season comes and is usually a jolt in whether that's tariffs, overall market concerns. It's not quite the same in terms of the volume increase, but at the same time, we have so many people exiting the market, whether that's through their own choice or, the choices being made for them financially. But we have so much capacity exiting the market, and not only capacity, but also brokers that help find capacity. There's going to be another correction, even if the market doesn't turn, just based on capacity. And so seeing that happen, there will be difficulties, right? Assuming that you have, hitched your wagon to the appropriate horse, right? Because if your clients go under for whatever reason, or you're doing a lot of work with a co-broker, or you're a carrier dealing directly with a broker and dealing with any of the bankruptcies that have impacted this industry, we're going to continue to see the ripple effect of that, and those people that kind of can bob and weave and dodge out of there. It's going to make for an interesting, you might have done everything right, you just happen to have the wrong client.
Yeah, yeah, and as far as clients go, and what carriers are doing, I think there's obviously legitimate capacity that's being, margins are squeezed, fuel shot up. I think this Ukraine war, nobody even saw that coming, so it really made a difficult situation even worse. And I feel like for a lot of carriers, for me, it's just I'm taken aback a little bit when I'm looking at LinkedIn and you have like a 60-year-old multi-generational family company and they're closing their doors. And it just a set of circumstances, bought too much equipment, could be COVID pricing, could be the wrong set of customers as that industry was impacted, and it just you can't collect. And that's the reality of businesses, just you got bills to pay. And then the
Yeah,
fraud piece right now is
yeah,
not
the fraud
helping
fraud is
anything.
no, the fraud is extremely difficult, and as part of the problem that you have, especially, and I see some posts on there, got have a number of friends in the industry, right? I think Chris Brewer of River City had made a comment that I saw online. He's like, hey, listen, most people are jumping from the contracted rates over to the spot market, right? And so, you know, assuming he verified his sources, and a lot of the stuff that you see, right, is that allows you the opportunity as the market turns, if it eventually turns as capacity exits, right, where you have the best ability to have upward mobility. And if you're stuck in contracted rates, we saw this coming out of the downturn in the early aughts, right? Customers that were supposed to have either every 6 months they had an RFQ or put out an RFP. Well, that now became a year. Those people that were doing a year, well, they wanted you to stay with your lower rates. So they waited, right? Another 2 years. Oh, well, we're good with the rates. We're not going to, because they know the next time they do off the RFP, everything's going to increase. And so we're seeing a lot of that now, not only from the contracts that I get, because a lot of times I would get contracts to review. There'd be, hey, the RFP is due this time. A lot of the contracts I'm reviewing aren't necessarily tied to an RFP, right? So when I say, hey, when is the RFP? They're like, oh, no, this is just a contract update. So I'm getting a lot more contract updates than I am with those tied to RFPs or RFQs, because they're like, oh, we have spot market opportunities. Oh, okay, great. Because that allows you, hey, the market changed this month from last month, that same load. I'm not tied to any capacity requirements. I don't have any, I didn't put myself into, hey, I need to take this many loads on this many lanes in order to reach my tender acceptance requirement. And in contracts, I always try to push back on that, because they always try to say, hey, you will take any shipment that we tender to you. Well, no, 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 no. I'm only going to take those shipments where I'm primary and it's within my committed capacity. You're not going to dump, and I can name a number of clients when I was in house that were infamous for this. And I try to advise my clients when I see those companies' contracts. We come up to a holiday, and for whatever reason, whether it's because they got, fraud was an issue with another carrier, they'll start jumping, oh, you're on this lane, so we're going to give you 20. And if you're not paying attention to your volume commitment, you just committed to 20 shipments on the same lane for that load when you were only supposed to take 5. And now you can't cover it, so then your service goes down. And now to your point, you're more susceptible to fraud, because you're now trying to cover these last minute loads, because you don't want your service failures to kick up, because they're threatening, hey, you don't move these shipments, you accepted them. You're not going to be on the next RFP, or you're going to lose spot market opportunities. And the fraud part, I'm seeing it a little bit better, and people are more open to the negotiations that we do in our contracts through the specific issues of getting the shippers involved. So for too long, shippers have been very hands off that, oh, it's the broker's problem. Or, hey, it's the carrier's problem. It's not my problem. No, it is your problem because you are in the best position to mitigate all of these losses by verifying who the heck shows up at your door
Yeah,
to
and
pick up those keys.
had a ton of interest from shippers ourselves. So that's been an interesting change because, you're working with brokerages. Brokerages want to know that, hey, this is the actual carrier, that's the actual owner, Face ID, banking, whatever we do on our end as verified carrier. But now hearing the shippers saying, hey, why do I keep getting hit? Why is my stuff getting stolen? Whether they're reaching out through CargoNet or GenLogs is helping recover, and we've helped some recoveries as well. But it's much easier to keep the wolf from getting in than try to find the wolf among the sheep as he's, already tearing them up. So that's a whole
Yeah,
different ballgame.
the ounce of
Prevention's
prevention
worth
is
more
worth a
than a pound of
pound of.
cure.
Yep. And so that's where we are. And I've used this an example before, but I was negotiating a contract with a large pharmaceutical company for one of my clients, and we had put in the provisions that said, hey, listen, if we tell you who the hell is coming to pick up your shipment, you need to verify that. Otherwise, we're not liable, right? And so CarMac is interesting because in order to be free from liability, unless you contractually modify it, in order to be free from liability, because it's not a proportionate, it's an all or nothing proposition. You need to be free from negligence, and you need to prove that the shipper or one of the other four exceptions applies. So the shipper's negligence. And so if you have, hey, you got frauded because you hired a carrier and you didn't verify their phone number or their email address, and you got hit by a fraudulent actor, and then the shipper doesn't verify that person and you're both negligent, well, CarMax says if you are the broker and you accepted liability as a carrier, you're going to be held liable because you can't show you're free from negligence. So I always try to modify that section. This is, hey, listen, regardless of what happens here, you're in the best position. I'm not there. I'm not physically present. And so you need to verify who shows up. And I had this pharmaceutical company tell me, well, we always know who shows up is the right person. I said, well, how do you know that? And they said, well, they come with the code. And I sat there and I was like, what are you talking about? Like, explain this to me. I'm like, you tell us the code, right? And they say, yes, we tell you the code. And the carrier that shows up has that code. I said, but if we hire somebody and they want to do something nefarious, what stops them from giving that code? This isn't like Inspector Gadget where or where it'll self-destruct and blow up the guy in the trash can, right? This is a situation where you can just pass it along as many times, and whoever shows up, it's not hard to tell someone what a security code is. And if that's all you're doing, you're not safe at all. And so that kind of mentality is just, well, sorry, I have a contract that I can hold you liable. Well, that's where we need to address contractually. You can't hold us liable when you're the one, that just refuses to take any action here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because you have that physical component, you have systems that, again, they worked for a time. But I like to look at it with COVID. It's like, hey, you and I went remote. Every scammer went remote. So they don't have to go scope out the yard and find a way to break in or try to just pilfer. They literally got into the TMSs or the load boards or, with all the cyber, they can just get in your computer, mimic what you're doing, study what you're doing. They'll have the code, they'll have whatever, they'll send a truck, they'll slap a sticker. There's, 30 different ways that they could skin this cat. And they'll actually pick up the load and they'll take it. But oftentimes, and I've heard it said, numerously, the person that's on the dock is usually the least trained person. So
Yep.
when you have weak processes and they rely on a system that was built for a different time, because COVID just the strategic cargo theft ramped up, and so they're still doing stuff that used to work because that meant something, and now it's so easily intercepted and somebody misdirects it, and it's not even like it's a scam company. They hired a real company to do it, and that's what we're seeing a whole lot. You have a carrier victim who did everything right. They might even get paid for the load. They might have skimmed or they misdirected or end up transloading it. There's a bunch of different things that can happen, but it's just the shippers, they have to change. And
Yep.
whether they realize it themselves, whether it's insurance that's now pushing on them that, hey, you guys keep getting hit and you guys aren't changing anything, there's going to be a consequence of a non-renewal, or your rate's going to go up, or there's a number of different things legally, like you said. There's certain concerns. So, I mean, a lot of things have to change. I know we have some legislation that's getting pushed through. I'm not sure if you were,
Yeah, Modus.
went
So
up to
so
DC.
Modus. Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with the new Modus system.
Ken Brittle, yeah, spoken
Yeah.
with them about what they're doing, and using IDEMIA for that screening and doing a little bit more background
Yeah.
work. So
Yeah.
good steps to see.
Yeah, so there's a number of handoffs along the fraudulent party timeline. You can either create a fraudulent entity that you're just going to hold this MC over here until the time comes that you need to use it, or you create an entity immediately in order to take a bunch of shipments, and until a freight guard report or some other you know note comes up on a watchdog report, you're going to take as many shipments as you can and then just disappear, right? So you have those two kind of methods on the onset, and that's what Modus is meant to protect and correct and prevent. And that's great because there's a whole bunch of those carriers out there. Not to mention, they're going to ask for, there's going to be that initial wave. Hey, everyone needs to verify this. What Modus will not address, at least not that I've seen, and maybe there'll be something that comes out, is the, hey, I'm a carrier, I'm exiting the market. Someone reaches out to me because they see I'm a one truck, one trailer person, because you can find that information, right? You can see there are, I forget the specific, I guess I probably wouldn't even repeat it on here, but right, there is links. You can look up the FMCSA posts a register every single day of people that gain authority and lose authority, which is what all the systems use to update them. You can just go there and look it up at any point. And so the fraudulent actors have that. And so they're going through and saying, hey, I see either you just shut down or you are, I see you just added your one truck, one trailer. Hey, if you ever want to sell, come talk to me. And then they buy that one truck, one trailer person's MC. The person's like, oh, I can get $5,000. That's great. I can pay for Christmas presents. But they don't know what to do with that when they sell it, right? So they sell their entity, but they don't notify anybody. So Modus isn't going to catch that. And so you're going to have a situation where if they just lost authority, that new party, if they ask you, hey, go ahead and sign back up so you can get it active and then sell it to me, you want to be very careful about that. Or if you say, hey, we're going to sell it, and you're not notifying the FMCSA, you're putting a lot of people in danger. Not to mention, I haven't seen a cause of action successfully against those people. Not to mention, I don't know that there would be any really, that'd be getting blood from a stone. Will there actually be any recovery opportunities from those individuals? But there's still going to be gaps, and we still need to be vigilant on how our carrier selection policies are maintained, and utilizing technology to help with that.
Mm-hmm. Now, Brian, is there like a way with, how when you sell your car, you could go on your DMV online or Department of Licensing in Washington to declare that you sold a car? Can they go to the Secretary of State and say, hey, sold it to this individual?
So the individual that purchased it needs to effectively do that to take over control. That person can certainly say, hey, listen, I sold it. But the reason why you need the new party is because you don't want, like, if I had a bunch of debts on my company, I can't just go, hey, Andre, I'm going to put your name here. Now you have the company. I'm out. This person owns it now. You can't do it that way. So for the protection of the person buying it or not buying it, right, you can't just give it off to somebody. So while, yes, there is a process to do it, most people, if you're the scammer, I'm going to take care of it. Don't worry about it. I got it.
Well, of course, yeah, because they want the appearance that it's the previous owner, the one that actually ran loads that people worked with for 3, 4, 5, 7 years.
And
That's what they want.
I'm gonna buy your phone number. Hey, I'm gonna update the address. Don't worry about it. But I'm gonna forward things, right? So if you have that, I'm gonna say, hey, just forward those on to me. But I'm only gonna get a few pieces of mail, right, before the scam takes place, and then I'm gone. And that person's like, oh, I sold the MC. I sold the DOT. Well, you can't sell the DOT. The FMCSA has really kind of clamped down on authority transfers, and you can't transfer a DOT number. A DOT number through an asset sale, a DOT number is tied to the EIN. Those two are married; they can't be separated. You can move and transfer an MC number, but the DOT number sits with it. You'd have to do a full equity sale uh, to move both over.
Yeah. So I mean, there are gaps. That's what I really like what our team does with the background. So they do dig into the Secretary of State. There's, different things that can trigger. We look at the bank. We want to actually see, like, we want to have you log in. It'll look like a bill pay. So it actually will show us the beneficiary, and we don't harp on the safety piece because we're really about the fraud piece and preventing strategic cargo theft. But we did find a case recently where um, it was a woman that set up, and then I can't remember if she had a CDL, but one of the beneficiaries on the account was actually an individual who I can't remember if it was a DUI or drug related, but had an MC shut down for safety and was trying to circumvent and start up another company, but then went through, I think it might have been a girlfriend. And so it was one of those, if you don't do that step, you'll never know that someone's trying to do something.
Exactly.
Or you'll see people that are, there's a web of companies all affiliated, whether it's a phone number or address or email address. And so you have to dig deep. We'll work before where you just, here's the phone number and send me a copy of your check and fill out this packet. I'm going to call you and, dispatch you. Um, it doesn't work that way anymore.
No,
That
and
sophistication has
relationships.
gone up.
Yeah, relationships are, and I know people will talk. Oh, everyone says this is a relationship business, right? No, nobody's like, oh, this business is great because I don't have to talk to anybody. There's very few of those types of businesses out there, right? So it is a relationship business, but it's extremely important. You know, I had a friend in college, and the only way I could describe him was if he didn't know you, he didn't like you. And so you sit there and go, well, how the hell does that work, right? How does he ever like somebody? Well, if he's forced into like doing business or hanging out with somebody, he'll he'll like you a lot, right? He's a very affable individual, but he generally is weary of strangers, and so that's kind of how we need to be in the transportation world, weary of strangers. You know, if we can meet people at conferences, if we can meet people and confirm and validate, hey, they've done good work. Now, it doesn't change anything. Someone can always decide, you know what, my life is not going the way I want it to. I'm going to start committing crimes, right? We can't prevent or anticipate those types of things where previously good actors turn bad. That happens. But all the stuff and what the statistics show is it's not those individuals. It's the people that come in with the intent to defraud from the onset that are causing a massive amount of disruption to our industry.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I guess what's your take on the next 1, 3, 5 years? Is it gonna level off? Is it gonna decrease? Is Modus gonna help, or are we still not there in terms of, the peak of where this could go? I'm hearing different things, so I always like to
Yeah.
ask for people's
Yeah. So,
take
so
on it.
my opinion is that at some point, shippers will find themselves alone and isolated in terms of cargo claims. Now, or they will continually, and I've had conversations at various conferences and meetings with large shippers, and they say, hey, we like to do business with the large brokers because we know when there's a claim, they're not asking for too much. They just pay it and move on, right? They're just going to pay it and move on. And I was like, well, that doesn't seem like a good relationship. And what happens, when there is a big one that comes and they say, what, pound sand? They're like, oh, they won't do that. And I was like, oh, okay, sure. Because we know for a fact, right? All the litigation is not done by the little guys, it's done by the big guys. And so there will eventually be litigation. And so the shippers need to be left out to dry. And I have a number of shipper clients. We don't have many. We try to focus on representing the brokers and the carriers, freight forwarders, warehousemen. But in the shippers that we do represent, it's all cargo claim introduction. That's how they come to us, because they had a cargo claim issue and they realize their contracts don't hold anybody accountable for anything, and they don't have a selection process. They don't know about they don't know about verified carrier. They don't know about any other technology out there. I have a spreadsheet and I do this, right? And I just call somebody and I go online, and maybe they have a truck stop account. I remember back in the day, they would say, oh, I have a Get Loaded account. For those of you that remember Get Loaded, which was a terrible, terrible name uh, for a load board or something in transportation. But you have this epiphany happening one terrible event at a time for shippers. And until shippers realize that I need to do that training, like you said, the people on the dock, and I would recommend it this way, that people address transportation like a football team. They talk about how the smartest people, no offense to wide receivers, but the smartest people, right? The people that take the longest to get on the field are the people closest to the ball, right? So your centers, your guards, your quarterbacks, your tackles, right? And it moves out from there. The people closest to the freight need to be the smartest people about freight. And that's really what needs to happen. So any shippers that have people on the dock, any receivers, because not only do you help protect yourself and from fraud, you also help protect yourself against unrecoverable cargo claims. Whereas, oh, well, I'm just going to say there's a claim here. Well, prove it. Go through the steps that require. Like I know certain customers that my clients have, and I see a contract from them. I'll see what their contract says in terms of how they analyze cargo claims or how they present cargo claims. And I'll tell them, hey, listen, this language is not great, but I know in practice, they do a great job of reporting cargo claims. So don't worry about that. I'm not going to worry about this language. I'm not going to try to modify it because I know in practice, they're never going to just send you a cargo claim. Out the QA report, a reefer readout, or not a reefer readout, temp tail, they're going to have all that inspection reports to you. Whereas I know some other customers will be like, hey, you're going to get a claim like 10 months later. You're going to have no notice of it. And they're just going to auto deduct. Like, so we need to make sure we have language in the contract that addresses that. But if the people smartest about transportation are closest to the cargo, it'll be better for everybody because the communication will be more poignant, it'll be more direct, and it will honestly generate better conversations about protecting the cargo.
Yeah, and I like to think about, hard lessons. You can choose to go through them yourself, and then you'll learn
Yep.
most of the time, right? Or you can choose to learn through other people. But this is where we get into a thing where it's like it's really hard. You could lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And some
Exactly.
people just refuse to do stuff until it gets so painful that, they have to do it. And I think that's a frustrating thing. And I worked in insurance for Allstate for a number of years. Feels like another, a lifetime ago. But uh, it's like an invisible product. And it's like conceptually, the chance of whatever it is there. But when it comes time to planning for it and not just doing the bare minimum, but like, hey, what actually you like protect me and where's that sweet spot of what I can afford versus what can I not afford to lose? Having these discussions, and it's a real challenge because when you're there, when you can touch it, when you have a cell phone and you're about to buy it, you're like, all right, I can see myself using this, or I'm willing to pay this. I want a little more memory because it's there, it's tangible. But when you have these non-tangible things, but they're very real, and the bottom line is impacted, right? You could show the history of it, but it's a difficult conversation to have, and it's hard for people to make good choices. And I think this is you
Yeah.
probably
No,
see it even more than me of how difficult it is sometimes because it's as clear as day, but you're almost speaking another language when it comes
yeah,
to the
and
decision
I'm
makers.
I'm glad you brought up insurance because insurance is extremely important because most people just assume insurance is going to pay. So I live in Florida. For anyone that knows me, the area
I
was
couldn't tell, Brian.
my area was devastated um, by Hurricane Helene, and then Milton came behind it and then hit a little bit further south. But and I have this morning actually not my neighbor, but the house next, so two houses down, just getting torn down today, actually from that storm about 15 months ago. And when we talk about insurance, I know that insurance does not protect everything, does not protect everyone. And so just because you have insurance doesn't mean that you're going to be protected in these losses. A lot of the fraud stuff that we're talking about, insurance companies aren't dumb. They're not there to pay claims. They're there to make money. And so they are not in the business of protecting brokers from fraudulent pickup shipments. And if you have a standard policy, you probably do not have coverage for that. Now, there are endorsements and other things you can get, broader policies, and it may be worth it, especially if you're moving high value freight, because it only takes one of those shipments to really impact your operations on a go forward basis. And for anyone out there, any of the entrepreneurs out there that are like, listen, I have a 5-year plan, I have a 3-year plan, 2-year plan, pay the money for the insurance. Because when you go to sell, all that's going to be add backs anyways, because the larger companies that come in, they're going to have those robust policies. They're going to have the coverages that oh, I can't afford that. Well, one of these losses, and then you look at your loss history, that's going to hit you. And if you are going on EBITDA, if you're going on your gross margin, right, they're going to, in your profitability, they're going to look at that loss and go, well, that's going to take it. If you're talking about a 5 times, that loss now costs you 5 times, right? Or you're at 6 times multiple, 7 times, whatever multiple you are, those cargo losses are going to impact your value. So having the insurance and having a more robust policy, and read your policy. And then the final thing I'll say about insurance is have your carrier selection people actually know what your policies cover from cargo or contingent cargo standpoint. Because when they're making a determination as to whether this carrier should be allowed or not allowed, if you have flexibility in your selection policy, which I don't recommend, you should kind of really be pretty strict in whatever is allowed is allowed. But when you're making that determination as to what the risks are, does this carrier's insurance cover it? Well, what does your insurance cover? And are you actually going to be covered if you take a risk on a carrier? And is your policy going to provide coverage? It's the same conversation you have when someone's holding a load hostage and you're super mad and you want to throw something, right? And you're sitting there going, gosh, I'm not going to pay this guy an extra $500. It's like, cool. Well, if he throws the cargo out, assuming your insurance covers it, there's probably a $5,000 deductible anyways. What's more important to you?
Yeah, yeah, and it's a challenge, right?
Yes.
It really, really is a challenge. Just because until you're confronted with that reality, you don't really think about it. And
No, read the
part of the issue is
policies.
everybody's chasing bottom dollar, and it always comes back to bite you in the butt. Uh, so
Yeah, and
it,
no one's advocating for you not to be profitable. Let me be clear. Don't be like, oh, I'm going to give up money here or margin. I'm not going to take the best rate if someone fits within my qualifications. Just make sure you have good qualifications in that process.
yeah, cross your T's, dot your I's, and then proceed to work within that pool of what's there. But if you're just shooting from the hip every single time, right? And it could work. It's one of those like, you know, you're doing a deadlift, you can get away with bad form sometimes, but when it gets you, it'll get you.
Yeah, and then
But
if you're old like me, it'll just hurt your back, and we don't need to be
yeah,
out of commission for
no,
that
no,
either.
no. I got the big 4-0 looking at me next
Oh man,
year.
I'm
So
on the other side of that. I'm just on the other side of that hill. Welcome.
yeah, I'm doing everything I can to prepare, but time is time. Uh,
Yes,
but yeah, Brian, I guess I just want to thank you for jumping on. A
of
lot of
course.
great insight. I think from the legal standpoint, it's good food for thought. Hopefully, somebody can benefit from some of these things and take something back to their team because again, the people closest to the freight, yeah, they're not thinking about this all the time, right? Somebody's got to break it down. Somebody's got to put it into a procedural, codify it at a company level within a policy, and then have it trickle down. Um, Hopefully, by learning information ahead of time like this and protecting themselves. Otherwise, it's the painful lessons that'll teach you.
Yes.
Uh, but yeah, so just want to thank you. And again, for everybody, we're going to keep analyzing the supply chain and looking at what's happening in the market from different vantage points. So again, Brian, thanks for jumping on.
Thanks
Really
for having me.
appreciate it.
It was a pleasure. Absolute pleasure.